Hi there. In today's lesson we're going to look at layouts in Rhino 6 as well as adding dimensions to your layouts. And we'll create this layout that you see here. We'll add a title block that you see down the bottom here with some basic information there about the title of the drawing, the date, who it's drawn by, and also a scale, which is important obviously. Now this drawing is set up for an A3 size page, so we'll go about setting that up for A3 size, and we'll add a logo. That could be your own logo, business logo, or business card that you might have created last year. Okay, let's get started. So let's come to the File menu and open. So we're going to open the file that I sent you, which is called Eames Replica Chair NIDA. Just click to open that. Now your display might look a little bit different to mine. I've set mine up for a sort of dark display, so other than that it'll be identical, so just don't mind that. And you'll see the normal 4 viewports here. But what we're going to do is add a new layout. Now to create a new layout, we come down here to the plus symbol down here at the bottom of your screen next to your display tabs there, and just click that plus symbol, and we're going to create a new layout. So just click that to create a new layout, and you can give this layout a name, so we can call it Tech Drawing. You can select the printer that you want to print this to. You don't have to. You can set that to none if you like. But you do, if you do have access to a PDF writer or saving as PDF file, you can select that. Set the size. My size is already set, but yours may not. So just scroll down and select A3 as your document size. Make sure you select landscape as your orientation. And importantly, set this initial detail count. The initial detail count set to 4 will display all the 4 views, all 4 windows, top, front, right, and perspective. So just make sure that's set to 4. Again, I think the default's 1. So once you've made those changes, just click OK, and you'll have a new layout displaying on your screen. Defaults to a wireframe display mode, but don't worry about that. We'll fix up some of this stuff in just a moment. The first thing we're going to do is that each one of these layouts is actually a viewport. You can double click in it and access it like a normal view. Okay, it's just displayed sort of on a A3 size page. So the first thing we're going to do is scale the size of these windows, the actual height of these windows. So just draw a bounding box. Make sure you select all 4 viewports there, and make sure your gumball is on. So make sure your gumball's on at the bottom of your screen. If you don't see it, you can just click on it to have it appear. And we're going to click on the green square there to scale the height. Just click on it once and it will bring up a size box. So we're going to scale this to 85% of its original size. So its current size is 1. Okay, it's set to like 100%. So to make it 85% of that, we'll type in 0.85. So just type 0.85 there and press enter, and you'll see that it's left the width the same, but the height has adjusted. So use the arrow key, or the arrow on your gumball there, I should say, and just drag this up. You want it sort of sitting up towards the edge of the page, something like I've got here. Okay, and you can click off it just to deselect it. Now don't worry about the display modes here. We're going to go through step by step just to adjust all this stuff and to set a scale. But the first thing we're going to do is add and create a title block. So what we'll do is draw a rectangle here. So come over to your default tools here and use the rectangle tool. And start off in the far right corner. So make sure your end snaps are on your object snaps. And click in that very right hand corner and just drag this down so that you're about in line with that leg there that you see of the chair. Somewhere around there. Don't worry if it's a little shorter, it doesn't matter, but not here. Okay, somewhere around here. And again, I'm just looking at my overall margins, trying to keep this a similar sort of height as well, so the offset from the edge of the page. So just click there once just to place that. And the first thing we'll do is place a little logo in here. So what we can do is, if you've got your own logo, you can place your own logo here. If not, you can use one of the NIDA ones. So I'll just open up my browser here, and you can see I'm on the NIDA homepage, okay, nida.edu.au, just the main homepage there. I'm just going to right click on the logo, and I'm going to save the image down to my downloads folder. Just right click there, and I'll come back to Rhino here. And in order to place that and to be able to scale and size that for my page, we can run a command called picture, which will allow you to browse to a particular folder. Mine's in my downloads folder here, downloaded today. So that image is there. As I say, if you want to use maybe your own logo that you've created, you're welcome to do that. Just make sure it's either a JPEG or PNG file, and click on that and click open. And it allows us to set the size of this. So I'm just going to click somewhere, I'll scroll in a bit here, and I'm going to click somewhere just towards the left hand side of my page, and just a bit short of the, I'm trying to fit it in that sort of space there, something like that. So that's our logo placed. And again, you can select that and scale it and adjust it to size if you need to. Just get it to fit within the bounds of that area in the bottom left hand corner of your document or your layout page there. Okay, the next thing we're going to do is place some text components in here, and we'll do that under the Dimensions tab, and we'll place a text block. So with the text block, set the height of this to, I'd say, 4 millimeters, and you can put in a name here. So we're going to call this title. I'll just put a couple of colons there after that, and click the OK button there. It allows you to nominate where to place this, so you get a little sort of like a loaded text icon that you can lay out and place wherever you want. You can move this around later, but just place it somewhere in the top left corner of that title block area. And the next thing we're going to do is give it and specify the path or the location of this document. So again, we'll go to Dimension and place another text block. And in fact, what we'll do just first is we'll put a date here. And with the date field, what we can actually do is just click OK there to set it, and put it somewhere down at the bottom of your page here. And we'll copy that, just press Ctrl+C, Ctrl+V, and drag that over a little bit. And the next thing we're going to do is actually have it automatically calculate the date based on today's date. And we've got some function controls and some mathematical controls in the text blocks. So if you just double click on that second date block there, you can see in here under FX text fields, you can click that, and that will bring up a whole bunch of options in here, and you can set the date. So if you click on date, you can format the date, and I'm going to use this one here, 6th of April 2020, and click OK there, and click OK once more. So now you can see it's calculated the date based on today's date on my computer. So let's just take that first date field and again we'll Control C and Control V. We'll drag that across here. And we'll now change this and we'll call this field Drawn By. And again, we'll copy that, Control C, Control V, drag that across. And here, put your name. And the last thing we're going to do is set or just put a reference to the scale. So again, you can click on any one of those two fields there. Press Control C, Control V. Drag it over here. We're going to set this as scale. Oops. Control C, Control V. Drag that across. And the scale, in this case I know the scale for this drawing is going to be 1 to 10. But if you're not sure, in a case of a particular drawing that you're doing, you can always come in and modify and edit that later on. Okay. And in the we'll come back to this title field. Let's just copy that. Control C, Control V. Just drag that across a bit. And I'll edit that, and we'll call this Eames Replica chair. Now we can set this in a different color as well. So if you come here to Object Properties, you can say for this particular object you can set it to a different color. So I'm going to set that to red here, okay, in the Object Properties, and click OK. And the last thing we're going to do is put the file location, where this file is actually located on our computer. So it's handy when you're working in an environment where you've got lots of drawings that you're doing, and you need to reference that maybe a couple of months later. You're not sure exactly where that's located. You can put the full path to that document in the drawing itself. So let's again just come to Dimension and Text Block. And here, instead of putting date here, we'll come down to Effects in the text fields, and we're going to set the file name. That's it. We include the full path and the file extension, so it's .3dm, and click OK. And I'm going to set the height of this just a bit smaller because I know it's not going to fit on my drawing, so I'll make it 2.5mm in this case. And click OK. So again, you get this loaded sort of text icon, so you can just click to place that. And we're starting to get somewhere now. So let's just do a little bit of tidying up here. I'm just going to move this just to center this a little bit more in this box, and I'm going to do the same for the scale here. Pop that in the corner just to space that out a bit. And the other thing is I'm just going to draw some lines just to sort of format these boxes a little bit better. So let's come to use the polyline tool. Just click in the space sort of somewhere between these two fields, so somewhere about halfway. You can always move this later on, holding Shift to constrain that, right click to place the line, and I can spread that out a bit higher if I want to. That's better. And we'll draw some vertical lines now. So again, just sort of line it up a little bit with the way that you've got your spacing here. I'll just press Enter to run the polyline tool again, click holding Shift, right click to close that, or press Enter. Okay, so that's some basic formatting done. If you want to, you can always come in and change and keep formatting some of these components. So or text elements. We can come in here and say this is going to be in bold. Okay, it's in red, but it's also bold. Let's make these bold. And let's look the basic information that we need. We need a title of a drawing. We need at least a date, who it's drawn by, and a scale. Some drawings have a revision number and some other additional information, but it's not necessary in this case. Okay, why don't we, before we get too far along, just save this. So just go to File and Save As, and save this. You can call it, Eames Replica Chair, NIDA dash tech drawing or something like that if you like. But just do that. Next, let's set up and format some of these windows. So each one of these is a viewport. As I say, you can click on any one of these particular details and change the display mode. So let's do that. We'll click on this one. In fact, we have to double click on it to set the display mode. And that's now active. Okay, when you double click in the window, it becomes active, or that viewport becomes active. So we're going to actually set this one to pen mode. Don't worry about the scale of this at the moment. Don't move any of these windows around at the moment. So the next thing is just double click on the one below it. And we're going to set that to pen mode. And the one on the right here, double click on that. And we'll set that to pen mode. And the one up the top, just double click on that. We're going to actually set that one to our, maybe our rendered display. In fact, why don't we set it to artistic? And just double click off that. It'll go back to white. Let's set some scale for these drawings. So if you actually just click on the edge of the display window, if you look on the right hand side under properties here, you'll have a scale value. So it's telling me that 1 millimeter on the page represents at the moment 5.896 on my model, but I'm going to use a scale of 1 to 10. So 1 millimeter on my page, I'm going to change this to 10, represents 10 millimeters on my model. Just press enter. And I want to lock that scale. So make sure you click the lock button there to lock it to that size. Okay, it's very important. Just click back off it. Let's do the same for the one below it. And we'll come in here and type in 10 for our scale and click locked. And then just click off that. And the nice thing is you'll see these are aligned in the different views, so that's important as well. Click on the one in the right viewport, set that scale to 10, click locked, and OK. And we can't set a scale for our perspective view because it is a perspective view, so you can sort of zoom in and zoom out of that, but we can't set a scale for that. So again, once you've done that, what we might do is just add some information about what those different views are. Now, you know that that's a top, a front and a right, but again, someone that receives a drawing or someone that you send this to, it's nice to annotate that on the drawing itself. So let's come to the dimensions menu again, and let's come to text block. We'll call this top TOP. I'm just doing this in capitals. And we'll set the size here, maybe a bit larger than what we used before. We'll set this to 5 and say OK. You'll get your little text icon loaded up on your cursor there. So just click somewhere in the right hand corner here just to set that. And if you want to, we can copy that. Control C, Control V. We can drag it straight down. And in the right hand panel with that text selected, in the right hand panel you can change that text value. So we'll call this front. Click there. And again we'll copy this, Control C, Control V. We'll drag that across into our right view here. And we'll call that right. And click off the page somewhere. Why don't we put this in a different layer? So we'll select, holding Shift, those three block texts that we just placed. Come to your Layers tab, and we'll put this under the tab called Dimensions, or under the layer called Dimensions. You can right click on the Dimensions layer and say Change Object Layer to set those objects into that layer, and you'll see that I've gone grey. Okay, just before we start adding some dimensions to our drawing here, we're going to set up some preferences for size of the dimensions and a few other things. So come to the Dimensions menu at the top there, and come down to Annotation Styles. And this will load a little window up here. So come into Edit. So you'll have the word default here for the current annotation style. Just come in and click Edit there. And the first thing we're going to edit is our dimensions. And set the extension line here. It's currently set to 1. To set that to 2. And the extension line offset, to set that to 2. The center mark size, just set that to 2 as well. You can click the little down arrow there to close that section. Come down to arrows, and just make sure your arrow size is set to 3. I think the default is 1, but just make sure it's set to 3. You can change the type of arrowheads and all sorts of things in here, so you've got a lot of control over that. I'll just leave that as an arrowhead for the moment. And set the leader arrow size as well to 3, if that's not already set. Click the down arrow there to close that. And just in here, again, the default I think is set to 2 decimal points, but just make sure that linear resolution is set to 1. It'll just round off all your measurements to round them up or down to 1 mil. So if it's fractional, let's say, 57.3 mil, it's going to round it down. If it's 57.8 mil, it's going to round it up to 59. Okay, just make sure the linear resolution set to 1 there. And that's it for those options. So you can just click Apply to apply them to your drawing, and then just click the OK button to close out of that. With that set, I'm going to just scroll in here a little bit on my drawing, and to activate or to add dimensions into a particular view, let's say in this case the top view, I need to double click on that to set that as active. And the first thing we're going to measure is the width of this section, this top section or back section of the chair. So if we come to dimension, we can use a linear dimension because we're measuring a length there. So click linear dimension. And for the first point, just make sure your mid snap is on. And also just put on your near snap, okay, for nearest point. So it will click to different sections or the nearest point on the edge of your model. And you want to scroll in, and you're basically looking to click the widest point there. In my case, it finds a quad point there in that position. Okay, mid or quad, either of those is fine. So click that as your first point and hold your Shift key down and come across to the other side, and you want to find the other end there. Okay, so just click once. Now before you place this dimension, it's movable, so you can change its location. Okay, so you can offset it away from where you've clicked. So I'm going to just move it using my mouse. You can move it up and down, and I'm just going to offset it away from the drawing itself a little bit, somewhere about there. And if you get this other bit appearing, just right click just to place that. So next we want to measure the distance actually, or the space between each of the legs. So we're going to put a dimension point here and one on the opposite side. So just press enter to run that linear dimension tool again and zoom right in here. Now the trick with this is that there are some fillets on this drawing, so it can be a bit tricky to measure, but if you click somewhere near the edge of that first fillet, you'll see it will highlight. Okay, just click somewhere there. In fact, we'll come down to the quadrant or end position. That's going to be a better one to measure from. So you might find the word mid or intersection. Click there. And I'm going to have to scroll right in here, holding my shift button down. And click on the opposite side. Again, where it says quad, might say intersection or quad. Just click there. Again, you'll get the dimension point. Don't click at that point. Just drag that down a little bit and put that down there. The next measurement we want to do is again a linear one, but it's from the front of this seat to the rear of it, just so we've got that width, if you like. So press enter to run the command again and click at the quadrant at the very front of the seat. Again, make sure your object snaps are on. You need a quad snap on in order to do that. And holding shift, click on the opposite side. It's found a perpendicular point in my case. Again, my perpendicular snaps on. So hold shift and click there. And just drag that out. Again, away from the model a little bit, somewhere to the right. So that's it for dimensioning the top view. Let's look at the front view. So to do that, double click on the viewport to activate that. So we're going to take a few measurements off here. We need the thickness of the wood here for this leg of the chair, and also the thickness here. And we also want to know what that bend is, what the radius is for that bend. So let's come to dimension, and we'll use a radial dimension. So select radial dimension there from your dimensions menu and scroll in and just click that edge, and you'll see it will give you a radius there, 65 mil. So just again, just position the arrow somewhere sort of towards the middle of that and just click there once. So it gives you an indication that's a radial measurement. It's a radius with the word R, and 65 is 65 millimeters, obviously, for that bend. Okay. Now to measure the length or the width of this leg, if we use a linear dimension, the problem is it's not actually aligned correctly to the actual width. It's not at an angle, if you like, so it's not giving us a true measurement. Just to show you that, if I go to dimension, linear dimension, and I click, let's say, at the quadrant here, and holding shift, it's given me a measurement of 26. Now I know this leg is 25 mil. So because it's measuring a linear distance, okay, it's not giving me a correct measurement. Okay, so I'll just select that dimension and delete it. And what we need to use is, under dimension, is we need to use an aligned dimension. Okay, so click somewhere along the edge of the chair and make sure you've got your perpendicular snap on at the bottom of your object snaps down here. Just click somewhere there, and it will find a perpendicular edge, and I'll just drag this down just away from my drawing a bit, and you can see that's the actual true measurement. That actual thickness of that leg is 25 mil. Okay, it's not 26. So you need to do that for any objects that you've got that are rotated. So if you've got something that's perfectly horizontal or vertical, you can obviously use just the standard linear dimension, but if it is at an angle, you need to do that and use a aligned dimension to get a correct or true measurement of that. Let's do the same for the seat here. So again, if I was just to do a linear dimension from one point to another, it's not going to give me a true measurement. I need to do it at an angle. So come to dimension, aligned dimension, and click. You probably find, in this case it's found the midpoint, and just click on that edge and across to the opposite edge, and that's 20 mil. So again, just move that dimension out away from your drawing a little bit, just so that it's not interfering with any of the actual drawing. And that's it for annotating the front view. So let's just pan across here. I'm using my right mouse button to go to my right view. So yeah, just double click on that to select the right view. And I'll scroll in a bit here so you can see this a bit clearer. So I'm going to measure the distance from this, actually just at this base, the distance from here to here. So we'll go to dimension, aligned dimension again, because we're not measuring a straight vertical or horizontal measurement, it's at an angle. And I'll click here and click up just to the midpoint there on the opposite end. And that will give me a measurement from that bend. Just wondering if that's actually useful or not. Probably should do it from the radius. I'll just hit escape here on my keyboard. Just press enter to run the dimension tool again, and we'll actually take it from this midpoint. Probably a better point to mark it from. And click on the end and drag that dimension point out a little bit. You should get a measurement of 336 there. Let's look at some other things. Let's go and use a linear dimension now. And we're going to measure the distance between each of these legs here. So again, just click, make sure you're getting a snap there at the end. And holding shift, come across to the opposite side. And just drag that down a little bit away from your drawing. And click to place that dimension. Now what happens if we want to create a set of dimensions that measure, let's say, from this leg to the gap to the other leg? We can still use a linear dimension, but what we can do is we can use the option continue. Okay, so continue, when we have a linear dimension and set continue to yes, what we can actually do, oops, just hit escape here, dimension, linear dimension, continue, oops, it's just because it's got that other dimension active, dimension, linear dimension, continue yes. What we can do is click the first point, let's say here, and on the opposite side, I'll just hold my shift button down here. And I can move that first dimension point downwards. And what should have happened there is it allowed me to continue adding dimensions. It didn't. Let me just delete that. So come to dimension, linear dimension, yes, set continue to yes there. Click that first point, holding shift, click the opposite side. It should give you a measurement around 60. Click to place the first point, and there we've got our continuous dimension here. So this will keep your dimensions all lined up nicely. So if I now click on the opposite side here at that end snap, and then again holding shift, click on the intersection on the other side, if I just press enter now, you'll see I've got this nice continuous dimension, and all the arrows are lined up, and all the dimensions are lined up. So it just keeps your drawing looking neat, but it's giving me a measurement of 60, 489, and then 60 on the other side, on the other leg there. Let's use a linear dimension again with that continue option set, and we're going to measure the linear dimension. So it's not the length, we're measuring the height from the bottom of the chair to this section underneath, and then let's say from there to the top of the chair there. So let's go to dimension, linear dimension again. It will remember that you used continue last time, so that will be set to yes. So again, I'm on my other dimension point. Just double click on your drawing to deselect it, double click on it to make that view active, and click dimension, linear dimension again, sorry. So we're going to measure the distance from here, this little endpoint here at the very bottom of the chair. Let's click somewhere towards the top there, say that midpoint there is fine. That will come out, and we'll just drag this dimension out a little further past the edge of the chair, and then we're going to put our last dimension point at this quad point here, and just press enter to close out of that. So you've now got a measurement from the actual height of the chair to the bottom of that section of wood, and the distance of the seat, from the base of the seat to the top. The other thing we could do is put an aligned dimension here for this thickness. Why don't we just do that? So come to dimension, we're going to do an aligned dimension, and we're measuring from here to the opposite side. Just hold the shift key down if you need to, and click on the end there. Finds a measurement of 20. Again, just drag that out away from your drawing a little bit, just not to interfere with the drawing itself. And double click just to close out of those dimensions. So that's basically it. Now what we can do is, if you want, is we'll fix up the dimensions displaying in this viewport in a moment. Let's just put them into a lighter color as well, because we can differentiate the dimensions with a different color to the actual line work and drawing in our tech drawing here. So let's just select all those dimensions. Just double click in each view, just select, holding your shift key, just click all of the dimensions, okay, and just right click here and change the object layer so they go onto that layer called dimensions, and you'll notice that they're in a grey color. Okay, do the same for each viewport. So double click on the next viewport, zoom in, hold shift and select all of the dimensions. When you've got all of them selected in that view, just come and right click on the word dimensions here in your layers tab and change object layer. Do the same for the last one in the right view. Double click on the viewport to activate it, hold shift and click on each of the dimensions. Right click on the dimensions layer and change object layer. Next thing to do is just fix up the dimensions in this view. So this view, as I say, is a display mode. So if you double click on it, not only can you move it around and zoom in, you can adjust its angle and stuff like that to get a different view if you like. So you're welcome to be as creative as you want with that. But we want to just hide these dimensions. So if I come to my display tab, okay, if your display tab is not listed in your side tabs here, you can click the little cogwheel under options, and you can come down to display, make sure there's a check mark in that, and that tab will appear. So come to the display tab and come to annotations and just switch that off. That will disable the dimensions from displaying in that viewport. Okay, just double click on the viewport to deactivate it. In fact, the other thing we can do is just my viewport, I think I've customized a bit. If you double click on it again, I think edges is what I've got off. Yeah, I've switched off edges. So again, it just depends what look you're going for. I can switch it back on again. Just double click. So you'll see that there's a bit of a line there. It's part of the way that the object was structured or created. So if you don't like that, you can disable that from the viewport. Double click on it. Click on edges there to disable that. And just double click again on your drawing. So we're almost there. The last thing just to do is that even though it looks as though there's a border around each one of these viewports, there's not. Okay, it's just to give you an indication as to the edge of the viewport itself. So if you, for instance, now went to File and Print, it'll pull up a print preview. You can see there's no border around each one of those boxes. Okay, it's just there to indicate the edge of the viewport. So we'll add a border. That's the last thing to do. I'll just click cancel here. So you can just do that using the rectangle tool. If you click on the rectangle tool and just draw a rectangle starting from the top corner across to here, and press enter to run the command again, and click one from there again to the other side. Do the same for the last two viewports. Press enter to run the command, click that top edge, click on the bottom right, and the same for the last. Click enter to run the command, click there and there. So now we've got a line as a border around the edge of each one of those viewports. So now if you go to File and Print, you'll see you've got a nice little formatted border there around your viewport. Okay. If you want to, if you do have a PDF writer, you can print and click print there and save that as a PDF file. It'll be saved in A3 size, so just be aware of that. You can't print that off on an A4 printer. It's not going to be to the right scale. Okay, so the scale is set for the size of paper that we're drawing on, and if you come and print that off at night or at Officeworks or wherever, if you've got access to an A3 printer, it'll print to the right scale for you. I'll just click close there. So that's it. Just do File and Save, just to save that again, and save that, and that will continue along with your drawing. So in your perspective view, you've got still the normal viewports that you have, but you've also got this detail view with the technical drawing laid out there. So what I'd like you to do is just go through this exercise once or maybe twice, maybe use something else instead of the chair. But if you're confident with that after using this chair, I'd like you to use this same process and create a layout for your piece of furniture and put some dimensions against it, and mark it up suitably, create a title block and all that as we did earlier, put in a logo and things, and save that as either a drawing that I'd like you to email to me before next class, or if you can save it as a PDF, you're welcome to do that. But either way, save that and email it to me along with this drawing exercise as well. I'd like you to submit both of those. And if you've got any questions, as always, please feel free to email me. And otherwise, we'll see you in the next class. Okay, bye for now.